The birth of a silent power. Empires are not always built with flags and armies. Sometimes they are built with files, encrypted cables, unmarked aircraft, and conversations that never appear in history books. For more than 70 years, one intelligence agency operated in the shadows, influencing governments, funding operations, shaping conflicts, and building networks that stretched across continents, not always visibly, not always officially, but often decisively. This is the story of how the CIA built a hidden empire, not of territory, but of influence, and it began in the early days of the Cold War. Chapter 1. The World. After World War II. In 1945, World War II ended out. But peace did not bring stability. Europe was devastated. Colonial empires were collapsing. The Soviet Union was expanding influence across Eastern Europe. The United States faced a new reality. Its former ally had become its primary rival. In 1947, amid growing fears of Soviet expansion, the U.S. government passed the National Security Act. That act created the Central Intelligence Agency. Its mission was clear: gather intelligence and protect American national security. But very quickly, its role expanded. It would not only collect information, it would shape events. Chapter 2. The first covert blueprint. The late 1940s and early 1950s were marked by anxiety in Washington. Communism was spreading. Governments in Europe appeared unstable. Leaders feared domino effects. So the CIA began building covert networks. In Italy's 1948 elections, the agency quietly supported anti-communist political groups. Funding was channeled discreetly. Propaganda campaigns were organized. The objective was simple: prevent Soviet-aligned governments from gaining power through elections. This became a template. Influence did not always require invasion. Sometimes it required persuasion, money, and strategic messaging. The hidden empire was not about conquering land. It was about controlling outcomes. Chapter 3. Operation Ajax and the Middle Eastern Turning Point. In 1953, Iran became one of the most significant early examples of covert intervention. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh had nationalized the country's oil industry, challenging British control. Western leaders feared economic loss, but also strategic drift toward Soviet influence. In coordination with British intelligence, the CIA supported efforts to destabilize Mossadegh's government. Political opposition was amplified. Media campaigns intensified. Street unrest grew. Eventually, Mossadegh was removed. The Shah regained control. Operation Ajax demonstrated that covert action could reshape governments without conventional war. It also planted seeds of long-term consequences that would surface decades later. Chapter 4. Guatemala and the Western Hemisphere. The model expanded beyond the Middle East. In 1954, Guatemala's government under President Jacobo Arbenz implemented land reforms that affected foreign corporate interests. U.S. officials viewed his policies as potentially aligned with communist expansion. The CIA launched Operation PB Success. Through psychological operations, training of opposition forces, and diplomatic pressure, Arbenz was removed. Again, covert networks proved effective. Again, it avoided direct U.S. military invasion. The strategy was clear. If a government threatened American strategic or economic interests during the Cold War, covert tools would be used. Chapter 5. Building global intelligence webs. Beyond coups, the CIA focused on building information networks. Station chiefs were placed in embassies worldwide. Alliances were formed with foreign intelligence agencies. Surveillance systems expanded. Informants were recruited. By the 1960s, the CIA had established operational footprints across Europe, Asia, Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East. This was not an empire of territory. It was an empire of access. Information became power, and access became influence. Chapter 6. The Vietnam era and covert escalation. During the Vietnam War, intelligence operations intensified. Covert programs were developed to disrupt enemy networks. Information gathering blended with paramilitary operations. The war demonstrated both the power and limits of covert influence. Intelligence could shape battlefield outcomes, but it could not always guarantee political victory. The experience forced adaptation. The agency refined how it operated in politically sensitive environments. Chapter 7. Africa and the Cold War chessboard. In the 1960s and 1970s, newly independent African states became arenas for Cold War competition. Superpowers sought influence in emerging governments. The CIA engaged in intelligence partnerships, political influence operations, and strategic monitoring. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union pursued its own networks. Africa became another layer of the hidden contest. This was not just about ideology. It was about strategic positioning, ports, resources, and diplomatic votes in international institutions. The shadow networks expanded quietly. Chapter 8. The 1970s Reckoning. By the 1970s, investigative journalism and congressional inquiries exposed several covert programs, public scrutiny increased, oversight mechanisms were introduced. The Church Committee hearings in the United States examined intelligence activities in unprecedented detail. This period reshaped how covert operations were conducted. More oversight, more legal boundaries, but not an end to covert activity. Instead, the hidden empire became more careful, more compartmentalized, more deniable. Chapter 9. Afghanistan and the expansion of proxy strategy. In 1979, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan triggered one of the largest covert operations in CIA history. The United States provided support to Afghan resistance fighters. Funding, training, and weapons flowed through regional partners. The objective was strategic: increase the cost of Soviet involvement. Over time, the conflict drained Soviet resources. When Moscow withdrew in 1989, many analysts viewed it as a major Cold War victory for Washington. But the long-term consequences were complex. Proxy warfare proved effective, but it also created networks that would evolve in unexpected ways. Chapter 10. The architecture of a hidden empire. By the end of the Cold War, the CIA had built intelligence alliances in dozens of countries, operational experience across continents, deep networks within military and political institutions. It had learned how to operate in secrecy while influencing public outcomes. It had shaped elections, supported allies, countered rivals. The hidden empire was not always visible, but it was deeply embedded in global geopolitics. Influence without borders. As the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, many believed the era of global covert competition would fade. But instead, a new phase was beginning, because without a single dominant rival, intelligence priorities shifted. Counterterrorism replaced containment, cyber operations expanded, financial tracking became strategic. The hidden empire did not disappear, it evolved. How the CIA adapted after the Cold War, how counterterrorism reshaped global networks, and whether shadow operations are more powerful today than ever before. An empire without borders. By the end of the Cold War, the CIA had constructed something unprecedented. Not colonies, not military bases alone, but influence networks, political contacts, intelligence sharing alliances, covert capabilities across continents. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, many believed the shadow struggle would fade. Instead, it transformed. Because without a single rival superpower, the intelligence battlefield became more complex, not less. Chapter 11. After the Cold War, a new mission. With the fall of the Soviet Union, the CIA faced an identity shift. For decades, its primary focus had been containment of communism. Now the question was, who is the enemy? The 1990s became a period of transition. Regional conflicts in the Balkans, the Middle East, and Africa required intelligence monitoring. Nuclear proliferation? Concerns rose. Terrorist networks began expanding quietly. The hidden empire adapted. Instead of focusing on state actors alone, it began tracking non-state groups, decentralized, mobile, and harder to detect. The nature of threat changed. So did the architecture of response. Chapter 12, September 11th, and the Intelligence Revolution. The attacks of September 11th, 2001 marked the most dramatic turning point in CIA history. Counterterrorism became the central mission. Funding expanded. Authorities widened. Global surveillance increased. The agency intensified cooperation with foreign intelligence services. Detention programs, covert tracking operations, and international partnerships grew rapidly. The shadow networks were no longer primarily about ideological rivalry. They were about preventing attacks. New bases were established. New regional alliances formed. Technology investment accelerated. The hidden empire entered a new era, faster, more digital, and more interconnected. Chapter 13, Drones and Remote Warfare. One of the most visible evolutions in intelligence operations was the use of unmanned aerial systems. Drone programs allowed remote monitoring and targeted operations in areas where conventional military deployment was politically complicated. These operations sparked debate internationally. Supporters argued they reduced large-scale military interventions. Critics questioned transparency and long-term consequences. But strategically, drones represented something larger, a shift toward remote influence. Distance no longer limited operational reach. The Shadow Empire had gained wings. Chapter 14, The Expansion of Cyber Intelligence. If the Cold War was fought with spies and satellites, the 21st century is fought with data. Cyber capabilities became central to intelligence strategy, monitoring digital communications, tracking financial flows, identifying emerging threats online. Cyber operations allowed influence without physical presence. Elections, infrastructure, financial systems all became potential targets in global intelligence competition. And this competition was not one-sided. Other powers developed similar capabilities. The hidden empire now existed in cyberspace, invisible, persistent, Global. Chapter 15. Financial Networks and Economic Leverage. Modern intelligence is deeply tied to financial systems. Tracking transactions can reveal networks. Sanctions enforcement relies on intelligence. Banking systems became strategic terrain. The CIA worked alongside other agencies to monitor funding channels linked to security threats. Money became as important as weapons. Financial intelligence allowed influence without visible force. But it also blurred the line between intelligence gathering and economic strategy. The battlefield was expanding beyond traditional definitions. Chapter 16. Partnerships and Shared Intelligence. One of the least visible but most powerful elements of CIA influence is partnership. Intelligence sharing agreements exist with numerous countries. Joint operations are coordinated quietly. Training programs build capacity in allied states. These partnerships extend influence without direct control. The hidden empire does not always act alone. It operates through networks, shared data, shared surveillance, shared objectives. But partnerships also require trust, and trust can be fragile. Diplomatic shifts can reshape intelligence relationships overnight. Chapter 17. Oversight and Public Debate. Unlike its early years, modern intelligence operates under stronger oversight structures. Congressional committees review programs, legal frameworks guide operations, public reporting, and investigative journalism increase transparency. Yet secrecy remains central to effectiveness. This creates tension. How much secrecy is necessary for national security? How much transparency is required for democratic accountability? The CIA's shadow networks must balance operational silence with political scrutiny. That tension defines modern intelligence work. Chapter 18. Rival Intelligence Powers. The CIA does not operate in isolation. Russia, China, Iran, and other nations have expanded intelligence operations globally. Cyber espionage, influence campaigns, and covert diplomacy are now common tools of statecraft. The hidden empire is no longer unique. It competes in a crowded field. Modern intelligence competition is multipolar. More actors, more operations, more complexity. This makes miscalculation more likely, and stability harder to maintain. Chapter 19. The Technological Future. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, satellite constellations. These technologies are reshaping intelligence. Data analysis that once took months now takes seconds. Global monitoring is more precise. Open source intelligence complements classified operations. The next generation of shadow networks may be less about human informants and more about algorithmic prediction, but technology introduces vulnerabilities. Cyber attacks can disrupt systems. Data leaks can expose operations. The hidden empire must constantly evolve to survive. Chapter 20. The Moral and Strategic Debate. For decades, covert operations have sparked global debate. Do they stabilize regions or destabilize them? Do they prevent wars or prolong conflicts? The answer depends on perspective. Intelligence agencies argue that silent influence often prevents larger wars. Critics argue that intervention undermines sovereignty and trust. The reality is complex. Covert networks have shaped political outcomes. They have supported allies. They have countered adversaries. But they have also produced unintended consequences. History shows that shadow strategies can create long-term ripple effects. Chapter 21. Is the hidden empire stronger? Today, in some ways, yes. Technology enhances reach. Global partnerships expand access. Financial systems increase leverage. But it also faces new constraints. Digital transparency makes secrecy harder. Global rivals mirror tactics. Public scrutiny is stronger. The hidden empire is more sophisticated, but also more challenged. It operates in a world where information spreads instantly. Mistakes cannot remain hidden as easily as before. Chapter 22. The Bigger Picture. Ultimately, the CIA's shadow networks are part of a broader truth. All major powers build influence systems, some visible, some covert. The United States did not invent intelligence competition. It institutionalized and expanded it during the Cold War. The hidden empire reflects how modern geopolitics functions. Influence rarely appears openly. It moves quietly, through relationships, through leverage, through strategy. Final reflection. What does this mean for the world? For more than 70 years, the CIA has operated at the center of global intelligence competition. It has shaped elections, supported allies, countered rivals, tracked threats, and built networks across continents. But the true story is larger than one agency. It is about how power operates in the modern world, not only through armies and treaties, but through information, access, and strategic positioning. The hidden empire is not made of land. It is made of connections. And as long as global rivalry continues, shadow networks will exist. The question is not whether intelligence agencies influence the world. The question is how responsibly that influence is managed. Script ending. For decades, the CIA built networks that stretched far beyond American borders. Some operations changed governments, some prevented conflicts, some remain classified, even today. But all of them shaped the geopolitical landscape in ways most people never see. The hidden empire was never about conquest. It was about control of information and influence. And in the modern world, that may be the most powerful empire of all. If you found this deep investigation insightful, make sure to like this video and subscribe to 60-Second History for more long-form documentaries that uncover the hidden forces shaping global history. Because sometimes the most powerful empires are the ones that operate in the shadows.